Okay, I think we're going to get started. On behalf of IronSource and Winclap, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. We have a very exciting and interesting panel that I'm very excited to start talking about. My name is Damon Marshall. I'm Vice President of Business Development at IronSource. Just a quick note about IronSource. We are a very robust monetization platform where we help app developers and publishers scale their businesses. We provide a monetization platform that allows publishers and developers to monetize their users via full screen video ads and other ad products. And we also provide tools that allow app developers to devise their own advertising strategy based on how users are interacting with their ads, so they can maximize revenue without disrupting the user experience. We also operate a very robust marketplace for user acquisition. We access up to around 650 million daily active users worldwide, and we provide a very excellent guidance in creatives as well as optimization to drive quality users to your app businesses. With regards to our panel today, we have a great panel. We're going to talk a little bit. So IronSource has been known as a business that focuses on the gaming industry. This last year, we started putting our efforts into non-gaming apps, and the finance vertical became or emerged as one of the best verticals for us. And so we collected a nice group of panelists to talk about their best practices. So we have Trang from Atom, Sally from Chime, and Gonzalo from Ripio to talk a little bit about their methodologies and how they transfer. So in the gaming business, we focus a lot on either in-app purchase or retention. And in the non-gaming universe, we focus a little bit more on things like subscription or CPA. And so that's where we're going to focus the majority of our conversation. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Pedro from Winclap, who's going to talk a little bit about Winclap, introduce our panelists, and get us started today. So Pedro, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Damon, for the introduction and for the introduction about the panel. Thank you to Sally, Trang, and Gonzalo for being part of this session today, and especially to all the audience that is here today listening to us. And well, we envision this to be a session in which we can all learn together something new. We will be, with Damon, very, very happy if at the end of the session, each of us leave this less than 60 minutes with a new test, with a new strategy to test in our marketing strategies. A little bit about Winclap and myself. I'm Per, I'm the COO and VP for the US for Winclap. Winclap is a company that we started in Argentina 5 years ago, and since then started to scale to the rest of Latam and now the US. We help mobile app advertisers to scale their apps, combining artificial intelligence and growth experts. A little bit more specifically, we offer a tech agency service, which we specialize in helping apps to diversify their media mix from traditional channels. Very closely together with this, we have a proprietary budget allocation platform based on AI that help us to, or help our clients to make better decisions about how to allocate the budget between different channels. And third thing, we help our clients on the creative side, the performance-oriented creative studio that can help to unlock new pockets of growth in the different channels where the creatives are a very, very strong layer, as IronSource is the case. Now, before we go specifically into the panelists and the session today, we would like to learn a little bit more about the audience. So Kayla is going to be sharing with all of you a very quick poll, like 2 questions. The first one is, what vertical do you work in? And secondly, the role. So the idea is that we have an idea of who are joining us today, whether it's a gaming or non-gaming, and within the non-gaming, which is a very large variety of space, which are the main verticals in which our audience is today joining us from. So I will ask you to complete that. Okay, as soon as we have the results, yes, here we just have, wow, that was very super fast. So, well, as was expected, finance and fintech is dominating the audience today. So I see that, well, a lot of the people in the audience want to learn specific things about the audience, about finance. But we're also seeing a lot of significant share of education and entertainment, which makes a lot of sense considering that probably business models have something in common in terms of the subscriptions and what we're looking for in the finance side. And then in terms of positions, well, everyone comes from marketing, so very happy to share. We definitely encourage everyone in the audience to share questions, because the second part of the webinar will be like raising questions from the audience. Some of you have already shared questions in advance, so definitely something very important. Now, going straight into our panelists, which are our stars today. First, I will ask Gon, Sally, and Trang to introduce yourselves and to a little bit about your background, your experience in the mobile ecosystem, and if you can share like one thing what you see that fintech is different from the rest of the ecosystems you have worked with in the past. Sally, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. Hey everyone, I'm Sally. I currently work at Chime. I'm a growth manager here. Chime is currently the largest neobank in the US right now. So for sure you guys have probably heard the word neobank being thrown around, but basically we have no brick and mortars. All you get is a mobile app and a debit card. And it's definitely becoming, more common during these days where people don't find the need to go to a brick and mortar, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So we've definitely seen some pretty good growth during this time. A lot of our features are actually made for your average, American consumer. You're not going to find, your average techie, using Chime. A lot of our features, including our most popular one, fee-free overdraft, allows you to actually overdraft negatively into your account. So you can see why this will help out a lot of Americans who are usually, paycheck to paycheck or in the negative. So for my role at Chime, I currently work on channel diversification. My team concentrates on basically expanding outside the Google and Facebook bubble. And we're going to get into a little bit later why this is really important. But yeah, we've definitely been able to, grow really quickly this way. And it's been exciting times in fintech. I'd say one thing that's pretty different, I actually came from the gaming space. IronSource was actually my first company in ad tech. So I have good memories. Good memories with Damon. But yeah, I'd say one really cool thing coming to fintech is just the life cycle of a person who stays within one product. You're going to see later on that, especially for a banking product, people aren't going to switch banks very often, and it's a very hard user to capture. So, where in gaming, there's a lot of competition to capture that user's attention span. We don't really have to do that as much in banking.
Thanks a lot, Sally. Super. Well, I have a lot of questions already. I guess them too related to what you have already shared. Trang, you want to follow?
Sure. So, thanks IronSource and Winclap for hosting us. Really happy to be here, and thanks to my fellow panelists and to the audience for participating. My name is Trang Dao. I lead growth at Atom Finance. We are an investment research market intelligence platform that delivers professional quality data analysis, research, and tools to the individual investor. So when you sign up for Atom, you follow stocks or you connect your brokerage. We deliver a fully customized mobile and web experience with all the relevant news, pricing, basically everything that you need to make smart investing decisions. Prior to Atom, I spent about 5 years in finance, structuring credit derivatives, and then at a hedge fund. And then for about the last decade or so, I've just been running growth and marketing across various mobile-first startups in the B2B and B2C space. For me, I found that in fintech, more so than in other industries, establishing knowledge, authority, and trust is really, really important. So, meaning If you're a fintech company, whether you're trying to solve problems in investing, banking, or personal finance, you should really keep in mind that the solutions that you build impact a person's personal assets and wealth. So the more that you focus your mission around recognizing the sanctity of that responsibility and build products that mitigate any risk or jeopardization to a person's financial well-being, the better.
Thank you, Trang. We have our third block of today's webinar is about creatives and how to educate the users. So I guess it seems that from this perspective about creating authority and trust between the users is going to be a very good topic to talk about.
For sure.
Gon, my colleague from Argentina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course, sure. I'm Gonzalo. I work for Ripio. We are a platform that allow people to buy and selling cryptocurrencies with all the challenges that you may know, that people in Latin America, basically, we have a low penetration in financial topics. And it's very challenging for us to work with cryptocurrencies because it's another layer to the complicated financial ecosystem here. I worked in Despegar, an online travel agency, and I think that the differences are that in retail companies or travel agencies companies, we were very focused on transactions. And in finance, I think that we must know our users and which are the barriers that they have to enter with in some different verticals as cryptocurrencies or other sources or other verticals like stocks or something like that.
Thanks a lot, Gonzalo.
Pedro,
yes.
Pedro, real quick before you get started, I just want to mention if you guys have any questions at all, just use the chat and we'll try to work them into the questioning. Sorry, Pedro.
Thank you, Damon. No,
Keep
that's
going.
perfect. Yes, please ask questions as much as possible. People usually don't ask too many questions on the webinars. We have seen this in the last, 14 months in the pandemic started having a lot of webinars. Please ask everything you want. If we don't have the answer or the Python have the answer, we will reach out after this with some data, but all the questions are welcome. So let's jump now into our session today. We have 3 topics. The first one is how to approach diversification of UA channels while scaling. The second one is going to go deeper into optimization, and finally on the creative side of the strategy. Now, starting with the first part, well, you already, Sally, mentioned a little bit about your role is related to diversification of channels. Can you share a little bit with us how and what is the main driver behind diversification of channels? We have seen that Chime has positioned themselves as the first or largest neobanking in the US, very strong growth in the last 14 months. What is the driver behind diversification?
Yeah, before I came on team, Google and Facebook was definitely our bread and butter. It's definitely very dependable, but Chime's growing really fast. We're a growth-focused company and we're very aggressive when it comes to our growth. So, by being bigger means that we need to be in more places, and that means like different placements or different types of ads and creatives, reaching out to different audience and being everywhere that we can. But I'd say that the biggest driver is probably just a first mover advantage. There's definitely a big advantage to, a banking partner being first to grab a user's attention. We're going to get into metrics a little bit later on, but, the direct deposit metric is really important for us. And once a user direct deposits, they're probably not going to go to another bank and put the rest of their money in there. So being first in marketing means that we're reaching out to that user's attention. We're constantly retargeting them. We're going to be showing our ad across a lot of different placements to capture their attention. And if we can be first for them to pick us as their primary banking account, then they're probably not going to go to a competitor.
Super interesting. It seems that being first, being in as many places as possible is the main driver there. In your case, Gonzalo, and I know a little more about the story, but can you share a little bit like what is the driver beyond driving diversification strategy at Ripio?
Yeah, of course. For us, it's a need because activities related to cryptocurrencies are banned in Google and Facebook. So we must go through other media sources and through other partners because we don't have the certifications that companies need to show to Google and Facebook and in order to get an allowance to start making some campaigns there. So I think it's a need, but beside that, I think that we have to diversify because if we don't diversify, we don't know which are the main channels or the channels where we can achieve the best performance.
Super clear. So Chime is about being first. Ripio, you need to diversify. If not, you cannot grow. Trang, Atom is a routine Series A company managing like capital. Capital is always a scarce resource when we are in a Series A company even more. What purpose serves certification in your process?
Yeah, thanks for validating my scarce resources. That's always something that's a struggle at a startup for sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with both Sally and Gonzalo, right? Like being first in the market in your particular space, huge deal. Recognizing the need to explore new channels, really important. You know, when I look at new channels, I tend to just think about this, the 3 or 4 things that I know have made Google and Facebook super successful, right? Eyeballs, data, and native ad experience. There's also obviously the strength of their programmatic advertising platform, but since this is a mobile U8 panel, I'm sure everyone's very familiar with mechanics of like real-time optimization and targeting. But essentially it just breaks down to both Google and Facebook have billions of monthly hyperactive users, which means that the ads that you run with them have organic potential reach, right? Like if you look at a new channel, you want to think about how many users is this channel going to reach? User data, right? Like both Google and Facebook have huge trove of first-party data. Most of it's self-declared by their own users. It's completely contained within their walled gardens, meaning they have this unique intelligence that you can use for targeting and optimization that you can't get outside their platform. So when you look at new channels, you want to think about that too, right? Like, does this particular channel provider have access to information that you wouldn't get anywhere else from any other user? And then like native ad formats. So both Facebook and Google have figured out how to make ads that people actually click on and consume like content. They've really fuzzied the line between ad and organic content. Like users on these platforms consume both almost indiscriminately, Facebook more than Google, but you do see Google starting to explore like discovery ad formats and things like that. So anytime, I'm presented with a new channel, I just basically have this checklist of these 3 factors. And I think will they offer something unique? Do they have like as much power as, the Googles, the Apples, the Amazons? And then that's how I decide how to proceed.
Oh, that's a lot of information and very valuable. I think with native formats, they were going to drive that in the creative side, but definitely they will happen last year with TikTok. They really managed to create a native format there. It's very interesting to discuss. Now, try going a little bit more into specifics. How do you manage this process of testing new channels? Do you have a certain time you test? Do you follow a specific checklist that you need to cover over time? How does it work in practice?
Yeah. I can tell you that when you have a lesser budget, there is definitely a very strict checklist compared to when you're working with larger budgets. So, the first thing I think about is budget allocation, right? I always have a dedicated test budget every month. It's sized according to how my entire acquisition program is tracking to my blended CPA targets, meaning if my core channels are tracking below target, I have more test budget and vice versa. In terms of figuring out which channels to test first, I basically go through the exercise that we talked about in the last question, just to figure out like how competitive this new channel can be against like the big ones that I have running in the core program. when it comes to like performance and measurement. I usually spend quite a bit of time working with a new channel provider to learn about the channel, right? Like how do prospects engage with this channel? What are they seeing for post view and post click attribution windows? Is this a channel that will achieve like reach, conversion, efficiency, all the above? What type of creative they seem to perform well? How easy is it to test the creative? And then there's like logistics and launch time, right? Just because like, again, limited resources. Like, is it easy for me to set up tracking and access reporting? Will I need a lot of production resources to generate creative? Like what will get me up like really quickly and like really fast?
Sally, in Chime, I can imagine, I don't know if this situation is different or similar at Atom. I would like to learn a little bit more there, but also you can compare how the process looks like between a fintech company as Chime, but also like comparing with your last experience in a gaming company where actually we're doing this for different games and everything, how this process of testing new channels change, how the timing changes, how the checklist that you follow is different.
Sorry, my internet has been a little bit in and out. So I hope I captured your question. It's like,
I think we lost you. Has everyone lost Sally?
Yeah. We all have problems with the internet.
Okay, sorry.
There it's back.
I've been in and out. Okay. Yeah, I can tackle that one. Yeah, so for us, we actually are pretty flexible in terms of our budget. So for us, the priority is going to go to which channels are going to be really scalable and which ones have the biggest opportunity. So for us, we're going to put a lot of priority into testing the big players in the ecosystem. Even we feel like we don't think it's going to work, we're going to put the budget to make sure that it does. So for instance, one of the biggest players that we see in the ecosystem right now is TikTok. We don't have specific creators made for TikTok, and we don't have specific people running TikTok, but we know that this is a new channel that eventually we're going to have to tackle. So we're going to put as much budget into it as possible to make sure that it's going to work. So, whether that's buying up specific creatives so that TikTok can work, or, we're going to put aside specific resources to make sure that TikTok can work. That's kind of how we're approaching it. Obviously, there's a lot of other smaller players in the space. Like there's going to be many channels that are like easily replicable and who are a little bit more similar. We're going to dedicate a lot of time towards these channels as well. But, if we give them a test budget and we know that it's not going to prove out, then we're going to move really quickly into the next one until we find one that really works and can scale for a long-term partnership.
And Ripio, what pains have you encountered in this process? Yeah, I know that you have tested a lot of channels and trying to diversify. Well, from Google and Facebook have all this restriction for crypto. What pains did you encounter in the process?
I think that the pains that we encounter are to understand the times of every media source to achieve the best performance. I think that if we don't have enough volume and if you don't designate enough budget, maybe you are trying to hunt some figure or some mythologic figure. So I think that you must test very well with all media sources and get enough data and understand the times that those partners can take to achieve the best performance and to get very solid conclusions in terms of when you compare the performance of the different media sources to know if you are really making a good decision there.
So it seems like giving the channel enough time to learn how to reach new users is like, and knowing what time is the perfect timing, not to spend too much, not to spend too little, but get like really true learning. It's kind of the holy grail there in the whole process. Now, once you start, you identify a channel that this is a place, a pocket of growth where we can grow. or a couple of them, how do you actually predict that channel performance at scale over time? Do you use any specific technique? Do you use technology? Do you use your own forecast? How do you know that channel, like how much growth can deliver over time?
First, we check with their performance teams, with the performance team, with the partners, and start making some curves where we define if we growth in budget, how will be the CPA's impact, which impact we will have our CPAs, and know if the volume that they will give us is enough to us, or we are not okay with that. And then we always can use some specific methods or tools, like your tool of budget allocation, for example, that try to measure how saturated is a media in particular.
So it seems like trying to understand that saturation moment for each of the channels, kind of the strategy there. Trang, going back to you there, I imagine that this process of trying to predict if channel is going to work or not is to do very, very fast to maximize the efficiency of the budget. How do you predict what's going to happen over time?
Yeah, so it depends on the scale and the budget of the program I'm running. So, if I were running a fully blown out media plan, like heavy on TV and offline channels and just like money everywhere, then definitely would use Gonzalo's method, right? Which is a bit more of like a media mix modeling top-down approach. You're taking historic data, you're combining it with other factors and then trying to predict expected returns. But since we're not there, at the startup level, I'm more likely to use just like multi-touch attribution methodologies. It's usually like a third-party platform I have in place. I focus more on understanding like the user level touch points and journeys based on like the actual exposures and conversions. And then once I've developed an understanding of like the common combinations of conversion pathways, I'll use that to assume what to expect from a new channel. So like, for example, this new channel, based on my assessment and all the work that I've done, seems to perform a lot like display. I know that display tends to sit at the beginning of a user's consideration journey because, for example, 70% of my conversion pathways start with a display ad. Therefore, I will benchmark and like expect this new channel to be measured like and hit the same targets as display. So it is very, it's just very like sort of user multi-touch level.
Super interesting. I think there should be at least some questions at the end about how this multi-channel methodology is used and how did you manage to introduce it. But now let us move to the next part of our session today. Damon, you want to introduce this topic?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about optimizing campaigns. And again, like, as I mentioned earlier, IronSource's DNA kind of came out of the gaming space, where measurements came probably a lot sooner or in a much shorter time frame. Sally, you were mentioning the differences that you saw with life cycle times being, and in your case, I think that 30 days is something that you've talked about in the past, and that's much harder to optimize for. So I just wanted to get an understanding of how, obviously CPA is your target, but can you talk a little bit more about what your KPIs are? And this is for everybody, by the way, how what metrics more specifically. I assume that retention or ROAS are less important than CPA targets. So can we talk a little bit more about that? I don't know, Sally, if you want to start with how, based on what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, obviously getting the user through that sign-up process is really important. And we do require the social security number. So, you can find that it's not as easy as like creating an email with a password. We do find that there is quite a bit of a sticky point when they're, showing PII information. But I think most importantly, we are still looking for that direct deposit. It's a very sticky point for our users, and it takes a really long time for this to happen. We can imagine that, direct deposit sometimes isn't logging into your ADP portal or your payroll provider and then entering your routing numbers. And then, all of a sudden your direct deposit just shows up in your Chime bank account. Like a lot of these people are actually like printing out their direct deposit forms and bring it to their employers and then being like, hey, employer, can you please process my direct deposit so it's going to Chime? And this takes a really long time to happen. As you said, like 30 days is kind of the average amount of time that we find users are able to successfully connect their accounts together. And a lot of this is happening at the tail end towards like the 20th to 30th day. So once they do that, we do find that the user stays with Chime for quite a long time. I said earlier that, we don't find that users churn too much once they attach their direct deposit. And it's true, it's such a hard event to get to already, and you're not going to be switching your direct deposit to multiple bank accounts on like multiple occasions.
So like, do those steps, like, do you take all of those steps and divide them from like just registering, and there might be a few other things they have to do to getting to that direct deposit? Like, are you measuring every step of that funnel?
Yeah, and it's really hard to measure, actually. I mean, direct deposit is an offline event, so it's actually hard to know like where they are in that funnel. We can kind of nudge them towards that step, like, hey, did you download your direct deposit form? Did you read this blog content on how to do a direct deposit? And did you activate your card? But then like physically going to connect those accounts together is kind of on them to do it. And no matter how much we educate them, it's just a really big step that we still need to be able to tackle.
Sure. Trang, you have any thoughts on this, on how Adam approaches the direct deposit funnel, or is that your KPI? What are you looking to do with your users?
Yeah, we are still, so, our feature set is pretty comprehensive, right? So we have, there aren't any direct deposits per se, but when a user signs up for an account, you connect your brokerages. We automatically ingest all of your holdings in real time and update it, and then send you like all the relevant news. But because we have news analysis, pricing, modeling, like detailed research, we don't actually, and because we're still a relatively new company, like we don't have like one particular action, just because we're finding our users actually use different parts of our product. Like they can only, like we have users who use probably 10% of like what we offer, but they're still a valuable user. So the way we think about it, or at least my metric is, cost per acquiring a valuable user, which is characterized basically by defining like a set of key actions that they take within the platform, how much revenue they're contributing, like how often they're showing up again after they've initially signed up. And so once we've identified those things, then like I'll pin like every channel to like those costs per those actions.
Sounds good. Gonzalo, you want to elaborate on how it's going over there at Ripio?
Yeah, we are in the same thing with Chime, I think, because it's very difficult for us to get the ID information from our users, and the ID photos and all the onboarding process. It's very complicated, and where we have the major pain points. So we measure all the steps of the funnel, starting with sign up and then following until the users really make a trade action or a transaction, trading fiat currency through cryptocurrencies. But I think that our North Star right now, it's the validation complete process. I think that that's the metric that we have an eye on it. And of course, we always measure the transactional events.
Right. It seems like everyone's trying to get to that, but it seems like there are a lot of steps along the way. And so what I'm trying to understand is, are you guys optimizing for those, stepping stones as much as you're optimizing for that end goal of a direct deposit or registration? How do you optimize for the path to where you're going as opposed to just where you're going? Anyone can answer. No one has an answer for that one?
Okay, I think that I particularly see all the ratios between those 5 or 6 steps of the funnel, and I try to make the same analysis with all media sources. It's not a simple analysis, but I think that it has to be done, because if you don't know how performance would be.
So Trang, for example, are you like, obviously the user takes a long time to get to that endpoint. So are you looking at the behavior of the user along that path, and then are you buying against another multiple CPA goals or KPIs, or is it still always focused on that end result?
Yeah, so it's actually the reverse for us. So, you know, like our users actually take all the actions we want them to take like pretty early on, just because you get the full functionality of our product once you actually link your portfolio, right? So we're a little bit, you know, I think we're a little different just because we're not like a transactional product. But I think to answer your question though, like the work, like I do a lot of work. I do rely on our data team quite a bit to build some predictive models in order to give me a set of upper funnel events that I know will most likely lead to the final events that, you know, I know will relate to like the user. And so it is a constant, you know, that model gets refreshed like pretty constantly. And if there's a particular channel that I'm running that I'm not getting enough volume towards like a main event, then I will certainly like update and then start optimizing that towards like an upper funnel event if it's predictive. And then I'll wait to like sort of collect enough volume to be able to move to what I'm actually wanting to target.
Cool. Gonzalo, Sally, do you have any other comments on this before Sally, you have anything else to say about that?
I mean, for us, we've been working pretty closely with our product team just to be able to predict what kind of user who goes through the sign up but doesn't direct deposit. Our enrollment process is pretty long, and we've been optimizing it for as much as possible so that it's easy to register as a Chime user. You know, we're trying to trigger different events within that enrollment funnel. So let's say, you know, if we're trying to get them to direct deposit, how do we know that they even have direct deposit? So how can we insert questions into the enrollment funnel to make sure that maybe they're employed, or, you know, they get paid through a portal or something like that. And then we'll trigger a specific event to make sure that it fires. So yeah, we're testing out different things like that. Obviously, you know, just because an event triggers doesn't mean that there's a high probability that they're going to direct deposit at the very end, but we're working towards that.
Cool. Thank you for that. All right, at risk of going down a rabbit hole, I just want to, for 1 minute each, talk a little bit about iOS 14 and your preparation for it. There are plenty of webinars and panels on this topic specifically, but I think everyone's interested, so be curious to hear how each of you's approaching it, or how your company's approaching it.
Sure.
Gonzalo or Trent, go ahead.
Yeah, I can just start. So again, because we're still a relatively new company, we actually have made it a huge priority over the last couple of sprints just to put like an experiment A/B testing platform in place, just because you know, with this like SK ad network conversion timer and I don't know, all the haziness around like how quickly we will need to get users to perform like key events. I did want to make sure that we would have the functionality to like within our onboarding process to be able to quickly A/B test like, you know, different onboarding scenarios just to see what would maximize like volume of like action towards that. I don't even know what it is now, like 48-hour window or 24-hour window. I'm not even sure.
Yeah,
anymore, but,
it depends on
the
whether
day.
the conversion value hits or not, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. What about you guys? Gonzalo?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
We're testing some campaigns with some partners, and we have the challenge to cut our onboarding process or cut the steps of the funnel and start seeing some upper funnel events, because if we cannot wait until a person make a cash-in, for example, because it always took more than 48 hours, for example. So we have to start with conversion values until our validation process is complete, and that it always occurs in a 24-hour window. So we are there, and we are waiting for some conclusions with our partners.
Sally, you want to make any comments about what you guys are up to?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for us, we've been in the midst of testing a lot of iOS while we still can. And while this rolls out, also starting to test on Scan as well. But we're actually very lucky that the majority of our marketing is actually web-based. So for us, as long as we continue to spend on web, we're not going to be super concerned about iOS 14.
Are any of your spending patterns going to change as a result, at least at the start? Do you guys feel like you're going to pull back or be more aggressive to try to learn? What do you expect is going to happen with your spending habits?
Here in Latin America, the share of iOS, it's very low. So I think it's a different scenario from the US, for example. So I don't
until Google does the same thing 6 months from now.
Exactly.
I will change everything, definitely.
Yeah, we are waiting for next year to hear some news from Android.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, so we have about 15 minutes left. I just want to mention that if anyone has any questions to ask these fine panelists, use the Q&A or the chat, and we will ask them with the last 5 minutes. I think we should probably move into the creative portion of the conversation. So obviously we've talked about the challenges that you guys have with regards to luring people into convert or link a bank account. So I want to talk a little bit about how you all utilize your creatives to get that to happen. So how do you educate your users? What is the communication path or messaging with your creatives? What have you tried differently, and what is working versus not working? A lot of general questions, but if you guys can talk a little bit about how you approach creative to achieve your goals. Let's start with Gonzalo.
Okay. We try to get some education to our users because, as I said, we have a low penetration in financial issues here, and even more in cryptocurrencies. So we make a launchpad, a hub content hub where we use a lot of information, and we give a lot of information. And we know that our user journey is larger than the upper funnel events that we can see on our metrics, on our MMPs, for example. So we try to give messages, educational messages like know Bitcoin, know how Bitcoin works, or some copies like that, because we want to people to join the crypto world, and it's very difficult to pass a lot of messages in a creative because.
What ad unit are you utilizing most? Are you using video, or is it mainly display?
We are using, I think, most video, and there we are trying to follow the best practices of the vertical finance, where we show a little bit of our product and the different actions that the user may take to start buying cryptocurrencies.
And what would you say your average number of creatives per campaign is?
We have like 2 videos per campaign and more than 8 banner creatives.
Okay.
For each partner, but I think with the other media sources, we have like 50 creatives running through the different media sources.
Sure. Cool. Trang, you want to talk a little bit about how you approach creative?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of interesting for us because we are an investment research platform, but our mission is we're not actually trying to teach users investing 101, right? Like we're not trying to explain the difference between like a short sale and a put option, or like how to calculate the alpha and beta coefficients for your investment strategy.
Right.
I think for us, it's been a bit of an advantage because our mission is really unique to what the trends in our industry have been, meaning, there's been a huge movement over the last few years to get everyone to access the markets, which we fully believe in. But for me, the challenge in my creative is trying to convey like, hey, it's not just about equal access to the markets, right? Like it's not about being able to access every single instrument out there in the world. It's also being able to access the same quality of data and information and resources that the professionals would have, because, again, that's the only way you can mitigate your risk if you're trying to, run investing strategies. So for us, like creative for me is a lot more about trying to find channels that will give us the formats that are, that will allow me to like explore like more long form content, video, right? Like
Yep.
my 320 by 50 units that I run, drive terribly converting users just because
Right.
I can't cram that entire positioning statement into that
So
small
you did
space.
mention that native was a channel or a product that you like to utilize, and native
Yeah.
typically is not video.
Yeah, native content. So, like things that, anything that will translate into me having the room and the space to be able to explain like, hey, we know that like everyone is used to like cheap and convenient trades, right? Everyone is like, obviously like that's a great thing. Democratizing access is great, but also like you should also be making sure that you're armed with all of this information that the professionals use, just to make sure, that's the only way that all of the playing ground is level.
Right. Cool. Sally, you want to talk a little bit about how creative runs over there at Chime?
Yeah, I think there's couple of different pieces here. For us, I think being on paid growth, like we're very hyper focused on growing our user base. So sometimes we're just going to concentrate on like really upper funnel on that like main enrollment and trying to drive as much of that as possible. To do that, we have to be really clear about like what Chime is and what the benefits are. So the best way to do that is to just market the features that we have. And now that, Chime's getting bigger and we have a lot of regulators in the space, we have to be not only like super clear, but like a lot of these creators have to be like really compliant.
Right.
And that means like every disclaimer has to be on there, exactly how the product works has to be on there. We can't talk about features however we want at this point. They have to be exactly what the regulators say that it is. So a lot of our creative approaches is actually just really simple. We know that like, hey, this is Chime, like this is what we offer, this is our feature, this is exactly what Fifi Overdraft is, this is what it does. Users will come because they see that there is a bigger benefit to using Chime over like your traditional big bank. On the content side and on the educational side, we do find that that's hard to do in like these short form statics. And sometimes we're not able to cram a lot of that information about like, how do you direct deposit into a video, or how do you like budget save, or how do you, how do you like get to a better financial place? We actually lean a lot on our brand team for this. We have a great Chime blog that we have linked through our website, but our brand team is great at like putting out all these resources for our members. And we drive them through the lifecycle process of like bring users who have like converted into members, into teaching them how to like, at the end of the day, we want you to be able to manage your money better. And I think we're still trying to connect those pieces of like, how do we drive educational content, but also use it, in a performance driven way. So whether that's like putting more information on our landing pages, our app stores, we're trying to find ways around like, cramming a lot of information into a small static ad or like a 15-second video. But yeah, that's definitely in progress.
And I mean, I see Chime on TV as well. And Trang, you mentioned TV as well. Maybe that's an easier communication channel. And then maybe some sort of retargeting on the mobile side to capture that user. Interesting. Do you guys want to talk a little bit we have a few minutes left. I'm curious how you look at your competitors and differentiate your creatives. Because fintech has definitely, in 2020 at least, seemed like it took a major step up, and there are a lot of services now. So I'm just curious how you guys tackle differentiating between all the various services that are out there. And I know that you guys do different things, but sometimes when consumers just see a finance-based ad, you got to figure out how to differentiate right then and there. So who wants to go first? Gonzalo, you want to talk a little bit about how you differentiate?
Oh. In our case, all cryptocurrency platforms are exchanges, and I think that our main difference is that we are making a very easy of use and a very simple platform to allow people to enter the cryptocurrency world. So I think that's the main difference there, and we are working, as I said, we are working in the educational proposal very hard in order to achieve all people that want to enter to this crypto world.
Got it. Trang?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to echo what I mentioned previously. It's our mission and sort of our product already kind of distinguishes us, right? So most people, you know, like we do have quite a unique offering in that we do offer like a wealth of information that you really cannot access anywhere else. So, you know, a lot of our users actually use us to complement like their existing brokerage accounts, just because we provide all this data that they can't get through their existing brokerages.
Yep.
So, you know, the differentiation, I think once users use us, it's very clear. You know, but again, the challenge is just kind of like you know, in our advertising, in our messaging, getting the users to even recognize like why that's a necessary part of their investing process.
Excellent. Sally, I don't know if you had any comments as well.
Yeah, I think we see competitors as like twofold. First of all, I think a lot of us are pitting us against like the traditional big banks, and it's kind of true. Like at the end of the day, like we want to be that differentiator, and we want like members to come to us and be like, wow, Chime is a game changer. Like they're doing things differently, and this is the way that things should be done. You know, like we shouldn't have to be charged on overdraft fees, or there shouldn't have to be like minimum or monthly fees for bank accounts. So we put that differentiator there that like Chime is different, and we're going to help you, and we're not going to like leave you in the dust. And our product really reflects that. I think the second part of it is like, you know, there's a lot of neobanks out there now. Like we recognize that, you know, there's a lot of great competitors, and a lot of our features are starting to look the same. So how do we differentiate from that? And this year we're putting a lot of concentration into our brand marketing. I think someone mentioned this earlier, but there's a lot of, you know, something that does differentiate gaming versus like fintech is that like brand, you know, it creates trust. And for banking, that's really important, where, you know, you're putting all your money into this product and you expect us to like, you know, keep it safe and not to do anything with it. So
whereas with a game or anything, you know, entertainment, you don't have to have trust. It just has to entertain you.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're putting a lot of effort into that. But again, I think being first to market is really important. And, you know, we've done that really well. And we've grown really fast compared to a lot of these other neobanks. So we're really grateful for that.
Cool. Pedro, I don't know if you wanted to ask any further questions before we opened it up to Q&A.
Well, we have 4 minutes left, so definitely we'll have a lot of questions, but I would like first to address the question from the audience, and then eventually we can circle back. The one here is asking, well, the three of you is, how do you adapt your creatives for each media? What factors do you consider to adapt each format?
I can take that. You know, it depends on the resources you have, right? So I find that, you know, the process is always, you know, there's a creative production process, which is, it starts, you know, with whether or not you have a brand team or not, but, you know, it starts with like kind of crafting the campaign and the message first. And then, and really, that's really the only thing to keep in mind, right? Like if it's pretty clear, like in a written brief at the start, like what you're trying to say and who you're trying to target, your production team should pretty easily be able to generate the different formats for like different channels. And for the most part, like all formats within like paid social and all formats within like web display and like mobile display are like more or less like the same. And so they're really, I actually haven't found too much of difficulty in trying to generate creative at scale across those formats. It's just when you're trying to create like video, animated content, that kind of thing, that I actually haven't really figured that out myself. I tend to just
Why are you running banners? Is it a brand play?
No, I'm not running banners. I'm just talking generally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Although I am running on a few like mobile ad networks, just on a CPA basis. But no, I'm running no banners. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just in general, start with your main message, group similar formats together, use outsource contractors when available.
Yeah.
Sally, go on, something to add? Oh, Sally, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can plus one to what Trang said. I think, you definitely, once you're at that level one of being able to disperse your message, the same message across like multiple channels, now you're getting to the point where like every channel is significantly different. And for us now, we have to tackle like something like a TikTok or a Snapchat versus like a native or like something that's more content or long form. So yeah, that's been really tough for us. I think it really does come down to like, who are your designers? What creative resources do you have? How much budget are you willing to put behind your creatives? I think I said earlier that like TikTok is going to be a pretty strategic channel for us. There's a lot of millennials on there. I think they could really find the product value in Chime. So we're going to put what we have towards TikTok. And that means like, okay, we're going to set aside these separate brainstorming sessions. We're going to think of like UGC concepts that we think could really blow up. Like what are the TikTok trends that are, really on fire right now, and how can we utilize them in our ads? It's definitely a very distinctive effort, but yeah, for us, if it's worth it, then we're going to put the resources that we have towards it.
Yep. Cool. All right. Looks like we're at 11 o'clock. Thank you guys very much. It was a very interesting conversation. I hope everyone got some gems, some nuggets to utilize. Pedro, you have any concluding messages for everybody?
No, thanks a lot to everyone. And I hope that, well, I have a couple of notes here of things to test, but I hope that everyone, the panelists and also the audience, have some new strategies to test today or tomorrow in our different growth strategies. Thanks a lot again, everyone, for your time.
Thank you guys very much for participating. Thank you guys. Good week.
Take care. Bye-bye.